I mean, I think I'm going to start playing on the right.
Okay. Well, we can discuss that. So, here we are again, Tom. I feel like we only do these podcasts when the weather is like this.
Yeah. So that cuts out about 9 months of the year.
Exactly. We're very quiet during the winter season, but another lovely outdoor podcast.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about your training. You came back from Madrid yesterday, so you did some training in Madrid, you did some training in Alicante, and we're going to talk a little bit about the PPL, because we've just had the first weekend of the PPL, and so we're seeing that now on social media, on the highlights, things like that. We'll talk about what we've got upcoming. I'm on a trip to Doha in a few days, and we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the platform at the moment.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Let's start with your training. I always find that easy, like interesting, because you always approach it from a professional tennis player mentality, and so it's quite interesting hearing about the training, because it's, for me, the professional or the professionalism of training in paddle versus tennis is quite different, I think, at the moment. So yeah, how was your training in Madrid?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, yeah, I agree. It feels like it's going through a bit of a transformation, isn't it? Like paddle as a sport, and I think tennis is just a bit further ahead in terms of that professionalism, probably because there's more money in it as well. So, when there's more money in it, I think, the players have more to spend on, physios, on fitness trainers and everything else. But no, it was really good. So I started off at the Diagonal Padel Academy, where I like to go a lot. So I started there. Then I went down to Alicante to train with the men's GB team down there, and then I went back to Madrid afterwards to train like the last few days in Diagonal. And yeah, it's nice. I think my level, I'm at a stage where I'm improving quite a lot. I'm trying to play as many tournaments as I can. Like you, we just played in the FIT last week, which was good, and I can see my level going up, particularly when I first went to Diagonal, where it felt like a bit of being thrown in the deep end a little bit. And now it's nice, because I start to see the progress, and I'm playing with better players there and competing with better players and starting to beat the better players there, which is just a nice feeling, I suppose. And so yeah, it was an awesome week to start with in Madrid, training indoors there. And
it's quite on that subject of training indoors. It's funny, because when I talk to people here and I say, "Oh, you're just training in Madrid," and people say, "Oh, I'd love to train in Spain. Yeah, I'm going to go." And particularly people that are maybe not like national players, but they're recreational players, they think, "Oh, I'm going to go and train in Spain." And in their mind, they're thinking, "I'm going to go to a sunny location where I'm going to play, and then I'm going to sit on a veranda watching the paddle, and it's going to be," that they have in their mentality a bit more what our paddle holidays are like.
Yeah.
But actually, we know from this academy and from most of the academies, they're almost indoor warehouses where there's loads and loads of Spanish or Argentinian players that are competing really hard, fighting really well, but the facilities are not often the best. Now, I know Diagonal have just done a bit of an upgrade, and so there's now a nicer, but the majority of these academies are that very kind of Rocky Balboa feeling, aren't they, where it's essentially a tin warehouse with no additional facilities. It's just courts, essentially.
Well, it's funny, because when I first said I'm going to go to Madrid and train, and there's this idea in their mind that, it's going to be amazing, you're going to be in the city, you're going to be having tapas, it's going to be, that image of, Madrid as a city, that's where you're going to be. But actually, a lot of the academies are in this kind of southern area of Madrid, where it's essentially just industrial sites, and there's these warehouses, and you've got like an auto parts centre, and you've got like building warehouses, and then suddenly there's a paddle club in the middle of it. So it's not that glamorous kind of idea that people have of training in Madrid. But like you say, the Diagonal Padel Academy has just moved to a new centre, this S7 Sports Centre, which has like new courts, it has a gym, so they've got a really good setup there now.
It's a bit like the tennis. It was a bit like when we would go on tour and you would play and you'd say, "Oh, I'm just going, for a professional tournament somewhere." And everyone would think, "Oh, that's amazing."
Yeah.
In their mind, they're thinking, Wimbledon, Roland Garros, or these places. And actually, it's some grotty tennis club in the middle of nowhere, miles away from anything. So it's that kind of adjustment, and people aren't going to know unless, well, people tell them or they see it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting, the indoor training versus outdoor, because then I went down to Alicante after that, the week after, to train with the GB men's team, and it was outside and it was sunny and it was in an outdoor club where there were verandas where people were having drinks, and so
important.
It was a different vibe there. But
the other training in Alicante before has been again in a warehouse, really low roofs, like 7 meters or 7.5 meters, and most of the time you can't hit a proper high lob. And it's weird, the first time we went to Alicante, I remember going together and we saw all the outdoor tennis courts, thought a lovely facility, and all the players trained in this indoor dingy, like you couldn't even call it an arena. I mean, it was a warehouse essentially. And I think mainly because a lot of the tournaments were indoor. I think that's part of the reason, and also they don't have the conditions. But I mean, it must have been nice playing outdoor.
It was nice, but it took a lot of adjustment, and for all of us, because you got to think most of the people on the British team are based in the UK. I think there's probably a few that are full time in Spain, but a lot of us, including us too, we're used to training indoors, and so when you go outside, it's really nice. You're here, you're going, it's nice to play in the sun, but then to get used to the wind, to get used to the sun,
it changes the game significantly.
Completely. Because and it's funny because there's always an element that is, even when the sun, you feel like, well, the sun's not in my eyes anymore. Well, you change ends, and then probably in the side of your eye, or maybe now you're playing, it's in your partner's eyes now. So there's always an element when you play outside
you've always got to consider it. Right? Like either you're the one with the sun in your eyes, or you're then lobbing because the sun is in their eyes, right? And so it actually becomes part of the game.
And that took, for us, it was a 3-day training camp, and I think by like day 2 we had started to adjust to it, all of us. But it was really good to train with the team, and I think the idea is to do more of these camps and to bring everyone together to do this, because a lot of us are based down in the south of the UK, but it's good for us to go and play in those conditions, because I believe most of the world championships will be in outdoor conditions. I think the next is in Italy, the European Championships. So I think it will be outdoor. So it's good for us to get used to that.
It's a really interesting subject, I think, this idea of having a broad training basis. Right now, you've gone for this weekend, and if we're in the UK, we're thinking, right, well, how are the UK going to produce players? Really, what the best way, we've talked about it before, is ex-tennis players, college tennis players, players that play county week, or strong tennis players, and convert them to paddle. And so in my mind, having a training camp in Spain is good for the 5-6 players that attend it, but it's not really that useful for performance in the country. And this is something that I think Great Britain and a lot of emerging countries have to really work on, is bringing lots of players into the game from a strong tennis background or other sport background, but giving an opportunity for people to train and to play. And that's something I don't think we do as well as we could at the moment. You've got to think of your journey. Now you're in a position where you can go to Madrid and you can go and train, but a lot of the people, your contemporaries in tennis, don't have that option. And if you look about what we're doing in this country, it's there's no way a player can come through and become a good paddle player at the moment, given that there's not that support there. So I do think it's great, and it's good to go and to play in these conditions, and it makes sense as a warm-up training for an event. But I think that the strategy needs to be rethought if we're going to try and bring more players into the game. At the moment, again, we've had the same 8 or 10 players, with the exception of like yourself or 1 or 2 others in the last few years that have come in, but it's been the same 8 or 10 players for years and years. And the only way to change that is to create a performance and training base in the country. I'm using UK as an example, but US will be the same, Australia, South Africa, all these countries will be the same. It is an advantage to go and to play against lots of players and play tournaments in Spain, but at some point you've got to say, right, now we need to train within our country and train players through that performance program.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, it's almost like they're separate things, right? I think doing training camps with the team abroad is not going to bring up the next generation of players. I think that has to be like, that's an infrastructure question that, you know, the federation and the people driving the sport in the country has to do. And actually, I think probably where this is leading is to say we should be doing more of these camps at home, and like you say, bringing in, you know, those next generation of tennis players and trying to convert them. But yeah, like these camps, they're nice for the sort of the GB squad to go and do. But yeah, there's a completely different and bigger.
It's a bigger picture that you've got to look at.
But I completely agree. I think, you know, we should be doing more, you know, more camps at home and getting those tennis players converted. Because I think we talked about this in a previous podcast. I've got so many of my friends now that I see on Instagram and I'm in contact with them. They're starting to pick up paddle, and you think they could be very, very good paddle players if they trained and, you know, they're motivated to do it. But what happens is they pick up a racket, they play, they think, oh, this is good, and then they start saying, well, hey, you know, where can I train? Where can I play? And it's like, well, actually, there isn't really any system for you to go through. There's no structure. So all you can really do is play with your mates every couple of weeks. And if you want to take it up more seriously, you have to do what I'm doing, or, you know, or go to Madrid and do all and go through that system that just it's not possible for the majority of people.
And it's difficult as well because they don't actually even get to see good paddle.
Yeah.
That's the main thing is they play in their areas, and I like you, I've got some friends that have taken the game up and they're in either the Midlands or North England and they're playing and they feel like they are strong players, but they've not seen like strong paddle. They've not even seen any of our British players play. They've not seen World Paddle Tour, well, Premier Paddle. So it's very difficult. And I suppose just moving on to the PPL in the US, I think last year a lot of the top US players played in the PPL. This year it's a lot stronger. I mean, there's the top pros playing now, but I think one of the best things about that PPL league is that people local, I say local, but people in the US can travel and can go and see that top level.
Yeah.
And so moving on to that, they've just finished the first weekend of this now, and so we're starting to see, you know, the players play, and it's great because there are the top players. There are your Tapi is playing it, and you see some amazing shots from him. You're also seeing Tolito Aguirre there from the A1, and he's now playing that, and it's great because he's up against those guys. And you're also seeing the top one or two US. This is where it's different this year in that they're not really able to play now because it's competitive and the stronger players are playing. But we're also seeing Lamperti and Maxi Sanchez and players that are, I don't want to say the past generation, but they're coming towards the end of their career, and you don't see them much in Premier and World Paddle Tour because now the level at the top is so strong. And I think it's a really nice mix, this PPL, because you do have the best in the world. You also have that previous generation can play. You've also got some of the other tour players that are playing, and also one or two of the US team that are entering, male and female, for these competitions. So I do like that structure.
What do you think about a country like the US, an emerging paddle market where awareness of the sport is probably relatively pretty low, but they've invested obviously in this PPL, created this competition where a lot of money has gone in, and in a way it could be seen as a bit of a risk, right? Because you're putting something on where essentially the awareness of a sport is quite low, and the attendance, you know, you might not get, you know, as much attendance as say you put it on in Spain or, you know, or Sweden or you know, a more developed paddle market. So what are your thoughts on, for example, another emerging paddle market doing something like this, given that, you know, essentially there'll be a lot of investment in it, and paddle is still, it's starting to grow, but it requires that awareness of what even is paddle. So what do you think?
I think the bigger risk was last year to this year. So last year, when I went to those finals, there weren't really many spectators. The location was in Tampa. It probably wasn't the most ideal location in terms of access for everyone, but it was. There were not many spectators. They still did a great job of production value, and it still looked like a big event. And this year, again, I don't see in the streams that we see, I don't see a lot of external spectators, general public coming to watch. You see the teams, but again, they've done a great job of the production and social media, and it looks like it's buzzing. And I think the big thing though was almost that celebrity piece, and this is something the US do so well, right? Their pickleball league took off. LeBron James and all these people, celebrities having their own pickleball teams, and it's something that they are used to, this idea of a super league and celebrity leagues and things. So I think the big thing was last year to this year getting enough recognition and getting these celebrities on board to drive the value up. It could have very easily not done that, and therefore in the second year they'd not have got the traction, therefore not got the money, therefore not brought the players like Tapia and things like that, and they probably would have done it over time, if not this year then in the years to come. But I think that's where the risk is, and I think if you talk about doing this in other countries, because the main funding I think comes from investing in the teams, and here we've got football celebrities and various other celebrities getting involved in the sport. So I think it can work to some extent in any country, right? It's part of the reason the game is growing. I'm sure they could do something similar in Germany. They've got a lot of the top German footballers and celebrities playing padel over there, and I think if anything it was probably slightly more of a risk in the US, given that pickleball is, I don't want to say pickleball is a competitor of padel, because I don't think it is, but in terms of a private pro league, then I think that probably was the risk. But there's no reason other countries couldn't. It just needs to make sure that the growth goes with it.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario, isn't it? Because you need these types of events to drive awareness, but at the same time you want enough awareness that people are going to attend and it's going to be a success.
And look, it's just getting some major investors on initially, right? That's what the PPL have done, is they've said, right, we see the potential in this market, and around the world you're seeing padel explode with growth. So we are banking on a sport that we know is going to grow. And if it, like the UK, I came back to the UK 2 years ago thinking that was the start of the explosive growth, and we're here 2 years later and it's probably still not quite there in terms of, it's on its way up for sure, but it's not been explosive for many reasons, to do with building facilities, permits, all sorts of things. But if the game is going like that, then it's a relatively safe bet. You've just got to get those investors that are willing to do that, and they're there in the sport. In every country they're there. You just need to find them, I think. Yeah,
the US is a super exciting market, and actually we've done a blog series on the US. I think there's a 4 or 5 part blog series that we've done, so if you want to check that out, it's on the padelschool.com. Under blogs, we've done like a really informative and interesting blog series on that.
And if you're in the US, we will be going more and more back to the US, and they'll all be up on our events page. I think we'll probably be announcing them in the next probably couple of weeks, really, what we'll be doing for the rest of the year there. But we're excited about that. I think it is definitely going to grow there.
Should we talk about our member challenge this month, which is the lob? One of the most important shots in the game, do you think?
Probably the most important. We were very fortunate to spend a bit of time with Martin Dineno, and I have huge respect for his game, and as a right side player I love watching him play, and we went through the lob, didn't we, and how he just simplifies it. He just makes it look so simple, and if you ask any of the top players, almost without exception, I imagine they'll all say the lob is probably the most important shot of the game. And also, I was thinking about this week when I was doing some clinics and some training, and I thought the lob is interesting because you and I, if we were to train, whenever we're hitting lobs, we're often feeding someone's bandeja or vibra. So we're not hitting the lob to the depth that we would want to in a game. We're hitting intentionally a short lob, and I was thinking that never happens in tennis. Yes, they warm up their smash before a game, but it's not so often that you are practicing a short lob to feed your opponent's smash and then not actually practicing a deep lob.
Yeah.
Which for me is crazy, because a lot of players don't practice their lob, and they don't work on that depth. And then when we come into a match, and we talked about this after our FIP tournament, we said, the depth on that lob is so important. But then players are not practicing it. So it's absolutely crucial, and that's our challenge this month to our members. It's 10 videos. Across those we've got 3 challenges, and we're doing technical, tactical, when to use the lob, attack versus defense lob, the direction of the lob, and that all comes in that course. And it's great to see players already starting to put those videos in so that we can analyse them, but also work on their lobs, because it is absolutely key.
Yeah, it's one of those shots that we noticed when we played the FIP, when we qualified and then we got to the main draw, and you start to notice that it's those small differences that those better players have. We noticed that our lobs compared to our opponents in the main draw were just a little bit shorter, and I've noticed that as well when I play, have the privilege really to play with like good players in Madrid and top 100 players, and it's not like they hit the ball faster or with more spin, but it's little things like their lob is just deep enough every time that I can't quite get a good overhead on, and those are the differences, aren't they, between good and very good players. And for recreational players, if they can improve their lob, that could be the difference between being a intermediate level to an advanced level.
Yeah, I mean, talking to Martin, it was the consistency of the precision. So it was hitting accurately but consistently, so that he can do that 100 times out of 100 into that space or location. And that's exactly what we felt. And it's exactly, if you go the beginner level, they might hit up a lob and it goes short on the first lob or the second lob, and then there's a smash. And as you go up in level, I think the lob is probably one of those shots that it has to improve as the level goes up.
Yeah,
it's the only way to continue, because we're often talking about your objective when you're at the back of the court. If you're at the back of the court, your objective is to take the net. It's not to finish the point, it's not to try and hit a winning passing shot, it's to take the net. And the best way to do that is with a lob. And if you can hit that lob well, then you are going to be more successful taking the net, and therefore have more opportunities to finish. And it's crucial.
This next week then you're off to Qatar, aren't you? So get a bit of sunshine here.
That's the first thing we think about.
Get your base tan
on these trips is like, what's the weather going to be like? And it's going to be hot.
Yeah,
it will be hot.
Yeah,
but I don't mind that. I'm used to that from Dubai, but I'm looking forward to that. I haven't actually. We've been to Qatar a few times for World Championships, but I've not been for training clinics. So I'm excited about this. Looking forward to it. Most of the clinics are full, which is great. And yeah, it's going to be 4 or 5 days in hot weather with some enthusiastic players. So I'm sure that the Qatar paddle community will be amazing. I often, the Qataris are great. Whenever we see them on trips or around there, they're fantastic. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And well, you're going to be in this. Hopefully, this weather.
I think this ends tomorrow.
Yeah,
by the way.
The last day.
Yeah. It's like, I think when you look at the forecast, you're like, oh.
I know. Well, we look at the forecast thinking, where are we going to train this week?
Yeah.
Basically, isn't it? And if it's raining, then we think, right, let's try and book some indoor courts. And if it's nice like this, we think, well, there is an option for outdoor, which is nice. I mean, this last week, I've been giving clinics and it's been wet every single day. And it's so tough because it changes the game. I'm often saying to players, make sure you use the glass. But by the time the floor is wet and the balls get wet, I'm almost doing the opposite, saying you really don't want to let that touch the glass, because it just hits the glass and just slides down. But yeah, enough about the weather. You're going to be doing a bit of training this week.
Well, we're going to be we're training
on Tuesday
before you go to Qatar, and it's interesting because when I went to Alicante, the group there were too many left-sided players. So in Alicante, they sort of said, "Oh, who wants to give the right a go?" And I said, "Oh, I'll give the right a go." And actually, when I first started paddle, remember we played together. I played on the right. You played on the left, and now we switch. But I actually really liked playing on the right, and what I might start to do now is train more on that right side, because for me, and there's a few things, obviously there's differences of training on the right, as I'm sure other people listening know, but for me what I really like about the right is using that backhand volley on through that middle ball is like probably my favourite shot, which obviously when you're on the left you have the forehand volley, which I found really difficult to change from tennis, because the tennis forehand volley is very different to the paddle forehand volley, whereas I feel like the backhand it's kind of similar, like there's not so much of a change. So that's been the biggest thing for me is at the net.
It's funny because I feel the other way.
Really?
I feel like on the right hand side I'm just ever so slightly restricted. Like my backhand volley is decent, and I can get it in a difficult spot, but I find it difficult to finish with the backhand volley. It can put under pressure, but to finish. Whereas the forehand, I really like that kind of ball that comes a bit floating into to finish with my forehand volley. But on the right side, I rarely get it.
Yeah.
I mainly play right side as a fitness and age thing, because nowadays, like when we play these matches, the left court players are beasts. So for me to keep physically up with them, I need a much more strict gym schedule.
It's funny because when you tell people, you know, you're going to play on the right, there's this immediate feeling that, oh well, if you can smash well or you have good overheads, you shouldn't play on the right. But actually, that's just a myth, isn't it?
Everyone wants to play on the left. I mean, how often does it happen that we do clinics and we'll have 12, 16 players in a clinic, and most of them are, oh, I'm left court player. I've only just started playing. I mean, it's one of those things that players watch players they like and think, right, I'm going to be a left court player because I want to, or I have good smashes. But really, I think it's a great thing to practice both sides, first of all, but then to be able to confidently play on both. Because there'll be times when you might play with a lefty and therefore you have to play on the left, and there's going to be times when you might play with a really strong player or someone with a slightly better overhead, and they might play on the left and then you need to play on the right. And so I think as the game develops, we're going to see more and more of a mix between sides.
Yeah, completely agree. And maybe it's just an age thing. As I'm getting older, I'm shifting to the right. But yeah, it sounds like we need to switch it back again. If you like your forehand volley,
I love playing on the left. I prefer playing on the left.
Okay,
but it just means I've got to get training then, because that's the toughest bit, isn't it? And I mean, you felt that in the tournament. It's so physical. Like you're moving across to take that vibra in the middle, getting fast back. I mean, it's tough.
But you're getting your fitness up, aren't you?
I am getting my fitness up, actually.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram.
You saw my personal. Yeah. I've done the odd personal Instagram recently. Yeah,
running. You're getting the runs in. I thought for your knee that was. It's one of those. If I do it once a week, and actually now I've strengthened more of glutes, hamstrings, things like that. It's actually, it's more manageable. But I like the running mainly from the mental side. Where I live, there's a park and it's hilly, and so I like this idea of being tired and having to go up a hill and push and keep pushing. So that's kind of why I like the runs, and I love it being out. I couldn't just do it on a treadmill. I love being outdoors, but I am working on my fitness. So get ready for that left side.
Yeah, exactly. Give me time. Give me time.
Sam, it's always a pleasure to catch up.
It's a joy.
We'll probably do one after your trip in Qatar, I imagine.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Hear how that went, and always a pleasure. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
And I suppose if you see this on YouTube, because we will put it on YouTube, let us know down in the comments if there's any topics you would like us to discuss in this podcast. We feel like it's a bit of a catch up on what we're doing and what's going on with the paddle school. But if there's any topics, more than happy to talk about those. And we'll see all of our members in our community.